All right, ladies and gents, I think we can get started now that our full panel is here, ready to rock and roll. How's the rest of the morning been going so far? Morning and afternoon. Good. How's our energy? Low, high. Woo. Shame. Shouldn't ask questions like this. It's such an honor to be here today. What an interesting topic we get to sit on a panel and have a conversation about. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot just by asking the questions, which I think will be really beautiful. All of you are so heavily immersed in the African landscape, and I think particularly in our continent, this topic is incredibly pertinent because of how much we use culture, music, dance, creation, content, art to, first of all, tell our story, really, to pass information on between generations. And you've seen its role that it can play in our political landscape and others as well. So this is such an interesting conversation we're going to be having today, and I feel very honored to sit amongst this panel. So lovely to have all of them with us, and some of them even lastminute.com booked through. So yeah, give them another round of applause. That deserves it. So today we're discussing harmony of change, music's impact on society, diversity, and ethics. And on the panel with us today, we've got Refilwe, the key account manager of Gallo Record Company. Give her a round of applause. Gabi, Shabangu, the general manager of Content Connect Africa. Thulani, aka FOSTA, joining us in the building from Bridges for Music. And then YoungstaCPT, recording artist here from Cape Town. All right, ladies and gents, let's start with the sort of overarching question. I'd like to keep this kind of as a group dialogue, really. So I do have things I'm going to be prompting our panel to discuss, and they can pass the mic amongst themselves. But I'm open to hands that get raised, things that you want to contribute or add to the conversation. We're really here to spark thought and idea, which can then be passed around the room and an opportunity to be able to contribute to it. So please do raise your hand. See this as a collaborative conversation, not a lecture from us up here. All right, all of you, let's go around the room and just get answers from each of you on the first bit, just about music as an essential aspect for all human civilization. Sounds super deep. It has the power. It does, hey, it does. Well, I was forced to be all serious, you know. Music really does have the power to transform us as a society, emotionally and otherwise. Do you feel that artists who create music in this space, I'm talking producers as well too, those behind the scenes, take this role of music seriously enough? Has it been realized yet?
I think it has. And I'll use one period where I saw this coming to life. I think the pandemic, more than anything, you saw the kind of music that artists were creating in that period because people were going through such a tough time adjusting to basically our new way of living. And people were creating music that spoke to a lot of mental health issues that people were facing. Even the way people were producing, you were a lot of like lo-fi and like, calm music was being produced in that period. It wasn't a lot of turn up because there was nothing really to celebrate. So I think people know how to, a lot of artists or a lot of musicians know how to adjust to the times and speak to the times. Nina Simone always says you need to reflect the times, through your art and through your music. And I think we're starting to see a lot more of that. So.
What's the question again? That was a long one. It was
It
a long one. I
was.
want to answer it right. I want to answer it right.
Do you think artists, musos, take this role that you play in society seriously enough, where you realize that music is such a power to change emotions, societies as a whole, narratives? Do you take that role seriously when you create?
For me, I would say that it's genre-based. I think there are certain genres that take it more serious than others. I feel like, for me now personally speaking, as a hip-hop artist, I don't feel like a lot of hip-hop musicians have understood the power that hip-hop specifically as a social commentary music genre has, because hip-hop has always been the genre of the oppressed people. So naturally we're supposed to comment on the social issues that plague the communities that these rappers come from and the listeners, because the listener is still in the same environment listening to the music. So if you create music that is outside of their reality, they might not be able to relate to it. So for certain genres, I would say yes, they have figured out their power and they are using it to the best of their ability. Maybe in the more local sphere and space, like I would say, like traditional African music, maybe gospel music as well. I would say sometimes R&B maybe, but as far as like South Africa is concerned, we come from a dance culture. You must understand that, bro. So even in the pandemic, yes, people were feeling them, on themselves, and people had a lot of like social anxiety. People had a mental awareness that was coming to the surface. People had a lot of reawakenings happening during the 2020 year. But that's also when TikTok blew up. That's also when Amapiano just got its legs and stood up higher than anything else. So at the same time, yes, we were aware probably that we could have made music that reflected the times. But at the same time, I think South Africa has a tendency to dance its pain away. Yeah. And we've been doing that for years, bro. Since Kwaito. So you have to understand, even though we have this responsibility, sometimes we do shy away from it and steer away from it because of how difficult it is sometimes to address this and face these demons, because it's a reality. It's not just a song. If I make a song about the Cape Flats, it sounds cool for 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but when the song is done, everything that's going on in the Cape Flats is still going on the Cape Flats. It doesn't end after the song does. So I think we do need to be more aware as hip-hop artists, as rappers, about this responsibility that we have.
See, you did know the question.
Right.
He knew the question.
Answered it right.
He knew the assignment.
Sure, yeah, I think, Riyadh did that situation where he did all the prep for the group assignment and I just pitched up for the presentation.
And ironically, he was the only one who didn't reply to the emails. And all of you were like, yeah, it's great, got it, noted. This one did research. He wrote his thesis.
So, I mean, I'm not going to take up too much time because I think Youngster summed it up very well. But one particular point, and I don't think this necessarily speaks to good or bad, but certainly the culture of SA, like Youngster said, we dance our pain away. So as far as responsibility, I would say that artists are catering very much to the responsibilities of the youth, which is currently to jol, to groove, to rock. And I'm not saying that that is great or right or whatever. What I am saying is I think it's speaking to, what the youth are experiencing. And right now, I would say globally, and maybe I'm getting a little bit woo-woo right now, everyone is very much, heads in the ground. We don't want to have to face the, repercussions of COVID or just the shittiness of what's happening in the world. So why not dance? Why not rock? Why not groove? So from a social perspective, 20 years, 30 years ago, our artists were singing against apartheid and stuff. And now we don't have as, I would say, obvious movements that we have to face. We don't have obvious or serious structures that we need to dismantle that I can say, that's apartheid, that's the civil rights movement, that's this. There's a very big existential, I think, dread that exists in the world. Sorry, guys, it will get better after this. But there is existential dread. And I think how artists are servicing that is saying, all right, dance, groove, rock.
Thank you.
Cool. For me, it's a yes. And however, I still feel there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Like what Youngster mentioned earlier on, I mean, if we look at Kwaito, how it was created, prior Kwaito, it was bubblegum music, and most of jazz, Afro jazz, most of that music was kind of like complaining, fighting against apartheid. And then after 94, that's when we kind of like needed something now to create the new language. Unfortunately, as much as we said, South Africans like to dance. So we've been dancing through all these years, and I think now it's about time where we start realizing the power that music has, And it's so unfortunate. There's been these few disturbance. When I say disturbance, I'm talking social media. It's a great thing for our industry, but it has also kind of like misled, the youth, because you see a youngster, kind of like living it, and then all of a sudden I want to live like youngster, forgetting that there's certain things that I need to do, before I get to a youngster, there's challenges that I need to face and so forth. So it's been a disturbance somewhere, somehow. However, there's organizations, I mean, I think we as Bridges for Music have kind of like championed that very well, to kind of bring that attention to all these international artists and say, look, guys, there's a purpose, we can do great things with music, not just, partying and popping champagnes and stuff like that. But there's great stuff that musicians and all artists around the world could actually have a social impact, because the music is power. Yeah.
Thank you, all of you, for that. It's a good place to start because today's topic, like I said, is music's role in diversity and ethics and society. And you sound like a lot of you are saying the same thing, that music in fact reflects the time. But I'm asking, what really is music's role to change that narrative, to change society, to change ethics, to change diversity, or to move things forward? And I think for now it's probably just a reflection of, which allows us to see it. If we can see it, we know it. If we know it, we can change it in some way. And so that seems to be the narrative we're in today. I'm going to come back to you, if you don't mind, youngster. I'd just like to get a sense of your music, because you, like you said, you fit into a genre of sound that is definitely built around narrative, around a story, around things that are happening that you want to comment on or that are necessary. What role does it play for you? What are you trying to do with the music, other than get people to groove through difficult times, for example? What are you trying to do? Is there like in inverted commas, like a political narrative that you're trying to get across?
The main objective, I would say, without sounding too mad, is to decolonize then recolonize. So we come from a land that has basically been oppressed, and the people in it as well. I'm talking about now, you're dating back here to the 1600th century we're talking about. For goodness sake, they still have a castle here. And they got cannons everywhere. Chapman's Peak, Out Bay, Cape Town, you name it. Simonstown, there's still cannons here. So this is a battleground. That castle is where some of your ancestors in this room was hung and sold. So, yes, we can party, but we first need to unlearn what we've been taught here. And it's been taught to us since some of us were able to start going to school. So literally, it's like 20 years worth of knowledge in your mind that is almost, I'd say, for you, as you know, the POC, is null and void. It's not, some of it is not real even. And in some of your history that should have been taught to you was never ever even exposed. The information has never been given. That library at UCT that burned down, you think that was an accident? There's a lot of question marks now that are never going to be answered. There's a lot of blanks that's never going to be filled in. There's a lot of stories that's never going to come to the surface now. Now it's even easier to hide it. And it should be harder because we're living in a time of social media, of technology, of AI. It should be easier for us to search these things and research these things. So you'd think that more people would actually be in the know now about what went on then, but it's almost a reverse. So that's why I'm saying we need to first decolonize, meaning we need to go back to the basics, where we treat everybody as human beings and not as black, white, colored, Indian, etc., etc. Those titles, those labels, that was the first thing that kind of effed up South Africa, I will say, by classing people. Even within colored people, you get Cape Malay and Cape Colored. That separated colored people from each other. I suppose in black culture it would be like tribalism, where you get Zulus, Xhosas, Tswana, Sudu, same thing, but just in the colored race, they only had two divisions, so to say. So there's been a lot of, how you can say, boxing and conforming and separation and segregation, so much so to the point where now, when I make a song about, you know, Cape Town, or I say Kaapstad, or I say the Cape of Good Hope, to some people, they understand, you know, especially the citizens and the locals, but to the greater South Africa, they still see Cape Town as Table Mountain and Robben Island and the waterfront and Seal Island and the cable cart. So my main thing in my music is to narrate the other half of the story that you've never heard.
More than half.
More than half. The other part of the mountain that you've never ever seen. And that's what I'm talking about by recolonizing. I need to tell you everything that you've missed out on. I need to fill you in now. And this is what's been taking place over the last 20 some odd years. And then hopefully in that we create some sort of a dialogue now where these topics can be discussed with each other. We need to discuss the fact that a substance like drugs is mainly used, peddled and sold in Cape Flats areas. When I go to the Kasi, I don't see so much Owen smoking tuk. Why is that? I see a lot of Owens that abuse alcohol in the Kasi, definitely. That's why they got so much bottle stores and shebeens. But in the colored areas, why do I just see merchants? It's drug dens. Why is drugs such a big problem in the colored areas? When you go around town, I'm sorry if I'm babbling on, bro.
It's all
When
good.
you go, you ask me what my music is about. This is what my music is about, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who have never listened to a Youngster CPT song, if you go around town right now, this place we're in, the CBD, when you look on some of these street corners, you're gonna see people using drugs. Okay, look at the race of these people. They are colored people. I'm trying to understand, like, I had to really do a lot of soul searching with myself and then also just do a lot of researching of this land to understand why is it that this is such a big problem in our communities, from kids to the elderly. I got uncles, but he's still on drugs to this day. These people are gonna turn 60. Man been smoking drugs since before Nelson Mandela was the president. How did that become a thing for them? I need to understand it. So my music is basically social commentary, but at the same time, I'm also, I don't want to say uncovering conspiracies, because then I'm probably going to have a target on my back for the rest of my life. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, somebody has to open the curtains. Somebody has to rip the veil off the eyes and say, this is what's been taking place. And it seems that I've been the chosen one. So my music, yes, indeed, is very, very edgy. It is very, like, cutthroat, but at the same time, it's necessary honesty.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm here for.
You can give that a round of applause. It feels right. No, don't hand that mic over.
God damn it.
I must ask a quick question about the impact of that. So clearly your intention is to create all this change and to tell the story that speaks to the majority of the people that are here, not this minority that we're hearing over sort of our radio stations, etc. And the stories that we don't get to hear that maybe aren't as popular. Does it have the impact that it needs? Are you changing people's lives, or are they just thinking you're the coolest guy ever, your music rocks, and they're dancing to it, and perhaps are buying merch or doing other things, supporting the business, and maybe just enjoying the sound, but nothing mentally or physiologically or societally actually changes from it? Does it actually have an impact?
I'd say that since Prophets of the City and Black Noise and Brasavani Kaap, I'm the third coming, the fourth coming of that. So there definitely has been a change. If you've ever seen any rapper in this country named something CPT, you can thank me for that. If you've ever heard rappers use more local colloquial slang nowadays, you can thank me for that. If you hear Owens are more proud to represent where they're from and they speak it openly, hell, there's an artist called DBN Gogo. There was really no abbreviations and cities in people's names when I started. I named myself Youngster CPT because there was already a guy named Youngster. That's actually the story. Really. That's
Everyone
actually
needs a good Insta handle, you know what I mean?
Thank you. So when I started in 2010, social media was literally just starting to climb. So everyone told me I need a Facebook page, blah, blah, blah. Went on Facebook, tried to type in Youngster, didn't work. They kept rejecting the name. When I checked why, it was because someone was already named Youngster and the person had way, way, way more followers than me. I think like 40,000 at the time. I had none. So when I started the page, I was like, shit, okay, I have to add something in here so that I can keep the name. And I thought, okay, what makes me different from this Youngster guy? I think he lived in Dublin or the UK or something like that. And then I checked there and I saw, okay, he's a white dude, he's from the UK, he's a DJ as well. I think he was playing EDM music at the time, so that had nothing to do with hip hop even. But I thought the only way that I can, separate myself from this guy is to add something in my name. And I thought, what makes me different? And I thought, oh, I'm from Cape Town. So I literally just typed in CPT, enter, and the page was accepted. So that unconscious thought that I had literally spawned an entire generation of rappers named something CPT. When I go to most of the communities in Cape Town, let's say the more underprivileged communities, the amount of kids that want to be rappers, the amount of kids that have started clothing labels, the amount of kids that shoot their own music videos, the amount of kids that even use their areas as the backdrops for the music videos. Like, we're not looking for a set. We've now realized, oh, our neighborhood is the set. Our corner is the set. What I'm trying to do is instill a sense of pride and self-confidence in his people because they never had it. No one ever told them that they were important or that they were valued. When I walk around the convention center now inside, I saw so many cool posters and they have all the artworks of the different movies and series and shows on TV. And I thought to myself, this is actually a quiet thing. I was telling my mother yesterday, it's crazy because the reboot of Shaka Zulu, it might just reawaken some child's deep thought of, am I inadequate? Am I inferior? And then he watches Shaka Zulu and he's like, God damn it, I'm a warrior, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? So in my mind, I'm thinking, shit, the colored lighties need a Shaka Zulu. That's all. All they need is an icon or some sort of a heroic image for them to copy. Because they imitate what they see. If they see gangsters every day, what do you think they're going to become? It's mathematics. So all I'm doing is just giving them a different version of the same thing and saying, gentlemen and ladies, this is now a new option. This is a new look. This is something that you guys can also do. And by the grace, they've actually caught on and they're starting to do it. If you go online now, you type in Cape Town hip-hop or you type in Kaapstad rap, you see we got drill, you see we got home, you see we got amapiano, you see we got Afrikaans hip-hop, that's a scene that is exploding, So I would say that a lot of this has now come from what we started back in 2010. My man is wearing a sweater that says Kaapstad Naya. The word Naya. Let's just think about that.
Cut that from the edit, yeah.
That's all right. You can cut it out, bro. But for the people that's listening, do you see that laughter that you're going through, this uncomfortable moment you're having right now? That's my music. Yeah. That's my music. It's uncomfortable truth, but it's necessary. Because if I don't say it, if I didn't say it 10 years ago up until now, we'd never be having this discussion even. So thank goodness I did. Can I give the mic away now?
Yeah, now you can.
Take this mic away from me, please.
Gabby, I want to ask you about
Please
the... Yeah. Good luck. Let's talk about the continent, because obviously we are obviously based here in South Africa and in Cape Town, and we've heard that Cape Town narrative, and we think that there's a lot going on here that's problematic and a lot that needs to be spoken about, and music really is a channel to do that. And yes, Youngster gets to pioneer a lot of that conversation. But what's happening in Africa, in your view, around music's role in diversity, society, and ethics?
So this is actually a great question. Refilwe and I were having a bit of a discussion about it. This is not going to be as rousing as Riyad's speech, so if you want to leave now, now's the chance. No. So we at Content Connect Africa, the whole reason we are Content Connect Africa is the idea is to not solely represent South African content, particularly because our CEO came up in the time of, kind of like the golden age that South Africa is experiencing now with like Lucky Dube, Brenda Fassie, Jabu Kanile, etc. But there was a very big, still Pan-African element of, we're all from the continent, we're all, Miriam Makeba was involved with Harry Belafonte and stuff. There was a very big Pan-African idea, which I think has disappeared somewhat. In some respects, I think it's necessary, in others not. But what I found, particularly from an ethics perspective, so we represent artists in Uganda, and a lot of their content comes through us as well in South Africa, and their artists make quite a bit of money through CRBTs, which are caller tunes, so when you call someone and you hear a little song. And obviously recently Uganda has introduced some pretty draconian laws regarding the LGBT community, and on one front, it's, there's a part where it's like, okay, well, we're contributing to the GDP of a country. We're assisting a country in growing. We're giving musicians and artists an opportunity for a platform. And then on the other side, well, we are assisting an economy that is essentially cracking down on a large portion of their population. And I know that's a very big, how do you answer that question? It's the same as why is South Africa politically aligned with Palestine, but we still deal with Israel, Why are we, ideologically aligned with Russia, but we still don't want to lose America as like our side chick? So it is, when it comes to ethics and I guess, the continent, it's very, very tricky, because as much as South Africa has its problems and deep, deep problems, I still would say that we are a pioneer when it comes to actually pioneering or championing the causes, fighting for the rights of people. And as far as the sort of markets that we're in, so we're in Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana. Most of those countries are quite proudly and loudly anti-LGBT, and that is then begs the question, well, how do we in good faith then operate? How do we do business? On the other end, if you completely remove your business, what if there is the next, I'm trying to think, I can't think of a
Youngster CPT.
Okay, the next youngster CPT who maybe is coming up in a community but is growing up youngster CPT in rural Uganda who is also gay or who might be non-binary, you know, if we rip ourselves out of that, you know, society, that industry, where do they go? So it's really, really tricky, and it's difficult for me to answer because I don't live in those countries. But certainly, I think there is a very scary backslide that's happening. Particularly, like I said, these countries are not as I'd say progressive as South Africa, so it is jarring. But in another sense, you know, unfortunately, I hate this quote, but I'm going to use it. Diamonds are made in rough circumstances. So, you know, how are you going to get the next big thing, the next youngster, the next fella, the next lucky, the next whoever, if you completely extract yourself from that because of, you know, ethics? So it's a weird, like, sort of, you're dancing on the very fine edge of a very, very finely sharpened sword. But yeah, we'll
Some
see.
really pertinent things. I know you say we're struggling to think about, but I think it's really, really pertinent what you've shared. The one is obviously you experiencing this huge backslide in where we're moving as a continent. I think Africa in general is losing a bit of its sense of identity. It was now trying to re-question what is our identity. Are we Ubuntu, togetherness, like family, or are we the West? What are we? Like, what are we trying to become? First world thought, where are we, you know? And I think I can see that and feel that in the way that things are. And the beautiful thing about those environments is that they do foster this need to fight back. And then that fighting back leads to protest. That protest leads to like art, and that art creates change. And then, you know, that's why we're getting a whole bunch of boring pop music from the West, because they're like, you know, now we're going to start seeing a little bit more cool stuff come out.
Sorry, this is just an aside, but I feel like this entire who are we, what are we, Pan-African question has come as a result of Amapiano, because Amapiano and Afrobeats are currently fighting a regional war about who is the African, the gem of Africa. Okay, take the mic from me now.
Thanks. Give it to Foster, because I have a question. You obviously have been involved with Bridges for Music for a while, and obviously you've been involved in the scene. So you're on the ground with the average South African who uses music as a mechanism to change their own personal circumstance, to immerse themselves in environments that would change their lives and therefore their families and therefore their communities and therefore everything else around them. So what's your perspective on music's role in music ethics and diversity, in society ethics and diversity in a South African context?
Well, honestly, like looking from my side, I would share some experiences, you know, personally from me. Firstly, when you look at our society, we're dealing with young kids coming from disadvantaged communities and with no hope. You know, no academics in the family, and you understand what that means. I mean, the most hired person could be a helper, you know, a cleaner or something, or petrol attendant. And now having the power of music, typical example, let's make me, I'll talk about myself as an example. I come from musical background, family, you know, growing up in Langa, had the talent, but with no role models. What happened? Ended up in crime, spent some time at Posmo, you know, and if maybe I, you know, kind of like I didn't reflect back to my life, or my senses didn't come back, I probably would have been dead, you know. But then because of realizing that actually there's this powerful tool, which is music, that can change my life and also could help me change other kids' lives, because I need first to be the role model that I want to see, or the role model that I never had. As Youngster mentioned, you know, it's very important to kind of like have those leaders within the communities, because, you know, I personally had a problem, you know, growing up. And there was always that belief in South Africa that you need to be based in Johannesburg, you know, in order to make it successfully. I was totally against that, because for me, it's like you're seeing these guys on a TV with big houses, which they don't own, flashy cars and stuff like that, which then instill the wrong mindset for the young kid. Because when you seek success, you see a flashy car and that stuff. But then if there's a foster who still lives in Langa, walks on his feet, or even drives a simple car, and is actually can sustain themselves through the music, that's inspiring for the next door neighbor. You know, they see that actually if Foster can do it, I can then do it. And remember, this kid is not an academic at school, you know, because this is another big problem that we have nowadays. You get into schools, there's no murals, there's no art murals, there's no music, there's no sports. And I mean, our townships, or should I say our communities, are quite well known, you know, for these things. We are creatives, you know. And now if you take away what we do the most. What the fuck are you trying to do? Where are we going to go to? Because you don't see doctors. I think the point that youngster actually mentioned, if you look at the demographics, majority of the doctors you never see in disadvantaged communities. So that means we need creatives. We need people that can work with hands, with skills. There's a lot of skills in the township. So, but what we try to do is that we use the power of music, to kind of like show these guys that actually there's potentials within music. When I started music, I wanted to be a producer, own my own label, but look where music has taken me. I'm not the only one, there's many other guys, that have came through the program thinking that, oh, wow, I want to be a Black Coffee and stuff like that. But once they get into the program, we start exposing them to other things, like, for instance, mindfulness, there's trauma. Most of the guys have either experienced trauma or there's an uncle that abuses substances and so forth. That's why it's very needed that we kind of like give them the resources to be able to manage that in order for them to open up, and also just like the benefits that music can help you with, the meeting people, networking, coming into spaces such as these, to learn. So as much as we talk about music, sometimes we're talking about recording artists or music producers, but there's actually a broader way to look at that. As much as I said, the program that we are running is quite a perfect example, because one also comes in wanting to be a DJ, but they actually learn how to write an email, which is something they could actually be able to transfer should they not get a studio to work in, but they can then probably start their career of kind of like starting their brand, designing their own logos, learning how to read a contract, how to present themselves, being punctual, behavior, which is the biggest thing.
This is beautiful. Thank you very much, FOSTA. Super cool. Yeah. Would you pass the mic to Refilwe? I'd like to... I'm always very controversial, so not in your kind of controversy. I just like poking at the bear.
Yeah.
Do you believe the music industry in South Africa and Africa is structured in such a way to prepare itself for this? Do we want to encourage, is the industry's the business model of making music, distributing music, and becoming famous in this space, is it built for diversity, societal change, ethics?
I think it is, but obviously it's a matter about access, right? How many people have access to those kind of spaces? And also, I'm seeing that a lot of people are taking matters into their own hands, When I started my career as a DJ, I didn't know a lot of people in the industry in terms of like your youngsters or labels and whatever, or people who could get me through the right doors. I had to basically find my niche first, and then just excel and see how I move through the space. I had to navigate that space on my own. There was no one helping me, but it's all about where you are and where you place yourself. Like Foster said, the kind of spaces you networking in, make sure like you need to meet the kind of people that can help you get to where you need to go. But I'm seeing a lot more organizations also contribute to this, like the Goethe Institute, for example. I know they've started a hub where you can pitch your business to them, and they help you from a legal point of view, from a tax point of view, on how to actually just get your business to the next level. So it's still institutions doing it, but more than anything, I'm just seeing a lot of people just actually make a way or pave the way for themselves in whatever it is and create their own platforms. And I think that's more important because you have more control, but there's also people around you who are also willing to contribute and help you, elevate and get to where you need to go. So it's all about using your network around you, but also creating your own platform essentially because you have more control.
But does the
freedom.
business of music, labels,
Yes.
producers, radio stations, are they in support of music creation, this ideology that we've been discussing here today? Are they open to that?
I think they are moving towards that space. I'm seeing a lot of labels offering better deals, which still give artists the entrepreneurial freedom to explore and to, kind of own their creativity, own their masters, and while still helping them with marketing, for example, or distribution. So I think a lot more labels are moving and businesses are moving towards the direction of actually supporting artists more from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Love it. All right, I'm going to open the floor. Any questions in the meantime that have been sparked or things that haven't been covered from what you want to know? Yes, sir. Love it. Yeah, it's back to this question I was trying to understand now about the business of music. And like you're right, there are people select. It's almost like the collective consciousness needs to be in line in order for all these pieces to be allowed this freedom. So who wants to take a stab at starting that conversation? Will you repeat the question? No, joking. You got it.
Look, with a genre like hip hop, you know, hip hop has elements. So it's the MCing, the graffitiing, the b-boying, the DJing, and then there's a fifth element that sometimes gets left out. But the fifth element is the most crucial one in order to complete the other four. So the fifth element is knowledge of self. And without knowledge of yourself, I don't think you can create for others really, because you're not aware who you are yet. I take it back to when I started rapping. I had like an American accent in my rap music for a couple of years because I had heard nobody on the radio or seen anybody on TV that said "awe" and "my brew" and "salute." So I don't want to say that word. We've already bleep it out. But yes, various slang that I use in my music, I'd never been comfortable putting it into lyrics. And one thing must also understand is the reason why that is the reality is because when we grow up as colored lighties, our parents tell us, don't say awe, don't say J, don't say kwai. You know what I mean? So we are taught already that speech and that slang makes us seem uneducated. So you don't want to go into a job interview and use words like that and, you know, kind of jeopardize yourself from getting the position. So the knowledge of self that I had to gain as the years went on was I had to be okay with being a riad before I could actually sell YoungstaCPT to anybody, you know? So standing on a stage now and hearing a crowd of people shouting my lyrics back at me, like I have a song called Westkap, which I made for the Western Cape as a province as a whole. I think that a song like that serves now as an anthem for people that previously didn't feel included in a genre of music. They didn't know where they were going, where they were fitting in or whatever. So I would just say from an identity point of view, this was something that I had to take on personally. I couldn't actually look to an example. There wasn't somebody before me that kind of laid these tracks down and I could just put my train on there and carry on driving. You know, I literally had to build this identity and build this sound and this kind of, you know, Cape slang genre almost. It's like a genre of rap music on its own. Because if you play this for anyone else in the world, there's only certain words they're going to identify and the rest of it is going to sound like a foreign language to them, which it kind of is. Hell, even in South Africa, you can play some of my music for South African people. You can play it for people in Joburg, Durban, PE, wherever. And even they will ask, what is he saying? You know? So already there, I've almost bridged some sort of gap, you know, between the languages already. Just being comfortable with rapping in my own speech and as myself. So I think that is also a big part of it. If we are not going to be brave enough to take that risk by being unapologetic in our music and in our image, in our performances, in our music videos as well, we can't be ashamed anymore. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Can I interject quickly? Because I have a question on that. Because the questions about how these songs are selected on radio stations or chosen by music producers or what are the producers of the radio stations, you know, what artists get to go on tour or not is based on who's going to sell tickets. And so there are a lot of decision makers that affect your ability to even get into that environment. And you were saying you started with an American accent because that's what got you in.
Yeah.
Is the process to get in first and then change the system from the inside, or can you just be unapologetically yourself from the beginning and then hope that people find this new thing attractive?
So funnily enough, the American accent didn't get me in. The reason why it didn't get me in is because we had AKA and we had delays at the time. Yeah. So nobody was checking for my light skin ass. So what I had to do basically was separate myself from my competition. And the only thing my competition wasn't doing was that. The only thing they weren't doing is they weren't using local, local slang, local soliloquies, local punchlines, local stories, slogans, phrases, quirks, proverbs, even if you want to call it that. And the way that the radio picked up on it was through the internet. Thank God for the internet. Yeah. Because if it wasn't for the internet, I would not be sitting here. Yeah. So the internet kind of gave me a back door into the industry.
Democratization of music in some way.
There we go. With the amount of corporatization around it as well. And we know music is a business too. It's an industry. It's a monopoly. With all that, And it's a lot of ownership as well. So I don't want to get too technical on this because once again, I don't want to make the target on my back any bigger. But the the amount of politics in the music industry, I'll put it to you this way. If top level management is not doing their job, or if, no, let's be honest. If the government is corrupt, everything underneath it has to be as well. So it's like a funnel. It goes down. Shit goes down, you know? So for me, I'm fortunate enough to have come in at a time when the internet was starting to boom, and I used that to my advantage. As I spoke about the Facebook page, I started a YouTube page, I started a Twitter page, started an Instagram page. As soon as all these things were invented, I used it to my advantage. And that is what brought me here. So radio was forced to catch on. The industry was forced to catch on. Shows were forced to book me. Promoters were forced to find out who's this guy, YoungstaCPT, where's he from, fly him to wherever he needs to go, because these people want to see him, because we noticed that the engagement and the numbers are quite high with this guy. So that is what I did, and that was my strategy to get in. I kind of snuck into the industry, I would say.
But both of those are linked. You mentioned you have to know who you are in order to know how to influence people. Once people know that you're part of this group and now we're a collective, it becomes harder to ignore externally by the business side of music.
And it's crazy because there were no influencers when I started rapping as well. But now if you look at it, you can turn an influencer into a rapper.
Easy.
You can turn an influencer into an artist now because of the power of the internet. So as much as it helped us all, it has also created, like FOSTA was saying earlier on, it's also created some sort of a backwards culture where now we think all we have to do is upload this, post that, tag this person, and automatically youngster must give me a feature, or the DJ must put me on his lineup, or I have to do the event because look at my engagement and look at my numbers. My numbers are the same as FOSTA. So how is it that I'm like an up and coming artist and he's an established artist, but I've managed to rack up the same amount of views and the same amount of traction as him overnight? So that is what the internet has also created. It's like a microwave generation. I feel like that's why they call it Instagram, because it's instant gratification that you're going to get. You go in 5 minutes later after you upload the pic, there's 100. You go 10 minutes later, there's 200. So it's a constant feed that's happening. So the artists now are also a little bit out of touch with reality. They're more in the virtual reality of things, So the balance also that one has to find, it's very tricky. As also like she was saying, you're walking on a very thin line, and it's like a razor's edge. The minute you slip, very difficult to get back on that pivot.
Yeah. You can give the mic to Gabi, but in the meantime, anyone else who has every 5 minutes getting 100 likes on your photos? Not me. Anyone else? No one? It's only a you problem, youngster. Do you want to raise it? Go ahead. I think it makes sense. I do think just for the nature of this conversation today, I do think next year at Musiki we should be having a conversation about the digital aspects of the social media stars and music, because I mean I work in the world of radio and we are seeing a lot of this. It actually is a bit frustrating from a radio station perspective, because you are being forced to play music that you're like, this is terrible music, but because it's viral on TikTok, like people want it, you play it, And so I think this over democratization as well too has gotten us into the same position, but it's not the topic of today. I think it does feed into it. So if yours would like to pose your question, let's keep it going. Beautiful. Yeah, it was going somewhere, and then I realized the question is now actually the most pertinent part, because I mean funding is always going to be an issue, and it's really political. It sounds like there's a heavy amount of politics involved in the space, and like I said, it requires mass scale movement. So the question is, maybe to the audience, can you guys share some insights for us? Is what does the music industry need to do if it's South Africa? And then first and foremost, I just want to tell you, stop pointing the finger at South Africa. Like Nigeria is doing much better work, and Kenya's doing much better work than us in the sort of global export of music and whether they're managing copyrights and content creation. So we've got a long way to go. So don't point to South Africa as your North Star. We're like third in the list. But I think, like you said, there's a lot more recognition of South Africa. What do we need to do as a music industry to improve diversity, ethics, and political and societal change?
I feel like this is a question that like you could have asked like Lord Byron 200 years ago, or Sylvia Plath like 70 years ago. Artists, I mean, like F. Scott Fitzgerald died like destitute. It's probably because of his alcoholism, but he didn't have money. And The Great Gatsby is like one of the greatest novels ever written in some people's minds. Why do people not give a fuck about the arts? Why is it that, you know, we're punting out doctors and lawyers and accountants and excise, etc.? I mean, I know to this day, people are always like, well, why are you studying BA law or a BA? Well, you know, why do you want to be a history teacher? Okay, ding, ding, ding. Now we have the threat of AI. Now everyone's crying because, okay, an AI can replicate what a doctor does. You just put its consciousness into a robot, boom. But we've seen what AI does with music. We've seen how it writes raps or puts together a ballad. It's not moving. It's grating. It's jarring. So that's just my little soapbox moment. As far as what we can do, so I disagree. One of the best byproducts I think of, this is going to sound awful when I say it, but of the Western influence of major labels in South Africa, etc., is the structures that it's created with our PROs, so the publishing rights organizations, your SAMRO's publishing. There's a very, very much more robust. I'm not saying that it's any less corrupt or any better, but that's why a lot of artists from the continent come to South Africa first, because they know that if they put a song out, they'll get an ISRC code, they will get their royalties, there will be some PRO that's tracking it. As far as, you know, the impact that has, it's not done well, because there are artists who do not know that they need to have an ISRC code. There are artists who do not know that if you sit in studio with 3 other people and you equally write the song, you have 33% split in that song. So whenever that song plays on radio, etc., you should be getting 33% of whatever the royalties are. I don't know how we fix the longevity of that, because it seems that the cap right now, because of, you know, the economy and the stuff, people just want to make money. Everyone wants to be able to eat. That's why you'll have, you know, artists who, let's just put it out there, I'm a piano artist who there might be 10 people in the studio. One person got this, the separates, one person went to a producer, made a banger, is now getting a 3-4 million rand advance from Sony, and the other 9 producers are sitting in Tokoza or sitting in Diepsloot or sitting in Langa, you know, resorting back to crime or not being able to feed their families. So the bigger question is, like, first of all, like you said, how do we make that work? But how do we also then shift the goalpost from not just surviving? Because everyone in the business or in the industry or in the creative industry does it to survive. Unless you get to the top 1% where you're Beyonce and now you're being told you're in the Illuminati, so you run the money, you run the new world order. The collective consciousness then has to shift from just the acquisition of wealth. But how do you tell people that who are living in Langa or living in Tokoza, who are stealing electricity because the government's stolen their electricity and now it's a matter where bread is 40 rand a loaf? How do I say to you, okay, but like don't make the final frontier money. Don't make the final acquisition fame or wealth. And so I don't know how to answer that question. And like I said, if we could have a seance now, I call on the spirit of F. Scott Fitzgerald. Why is it that artists die destitute? Why is it? And not just singers, musicians, painters, flipping celloists. It's a industry-wide problem. And only a very small percentage get out and make their money. And then they're not true artists. Because no billionaire, and guys, you can kick me out after this, no billionaire is a true artist. Do you know how much you have to do to become a billionaire? Do you know how many people you have to squash along the way? A true artist is someone who does it as a craft, who does it because it's God's given gift, etc. But what's God's given gift going to give to you when the bills come, ding, 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 and now it's your debit order for your car or your debit order for your medical aid? So I don't know, and hopefully with all our brains together and this beautiful panel together, we can actually sit and say, okay, what how do we, because we can't rely on the government, how do we then say, like you said, you can come here to learn to become a producer, but now you've learned how to write an email. That's a transferable skill. Okay, you came here because you want to learn to be the next younger CPT. Oh shit, now you know how to read your own contract. You don't need to go to a lawyer. You don't need to rely on or just blindly sign a contract. Is it those small, little, minor sort of steps and I guess contributions that will lead to a bigger shift? For me personally, that's what I believe. It's those small things that create longevity and sustainability, not the big, okay, here's 100 billion rand South African music industry, feed all your artists and pay all their royalties. That will last for all of 5 minutes. And someone at the top would have scraped off 98 billion.
You said we should kick you off. Can you leave now? Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Please pass the mic to FOSTA. That's really cool. She deserves a round of applause for that, I think.
Cool.
FOSTA, I'd like your opinion on this particularly because obviously you're dealing with this on the sort of pure commerce side, but just if we may, to get a sense of what Gabi, just some elements of what you were saying that I think need to be like sort of put down is we know as a society to survive you need money, you need to have a job, and we've put value on career and money and jobs to do that. We haven't put value on music as an ability to create change, ethics and impact society, and we need to have more value. It almost needs to become its own NFT, like its own sort of non-fungible token, that this thing is precious, it is like gold, it is a commodity that if you take it away, you don't have joy, you don't have dance, you don't have anything, you have nothing without creativity, but we don't really have that as a sort of as a main sort of mechanism. How do we reinstantiate that sort of value on the craft itself so that it becomes a commodity that we have to have to survive? We must eat. It's a basic need of society.
So sorry, Danilo. I just firstly wanted to just come back to Lisandro's
Go ahead,
question.
His question is probably better anyway.
Because I know sometimes when we're looking at things from outside South Africa, you all looking at South Africa thinking, it's all good and so forth. Actually, it's still the beginning of South Africa. So music is still not seen as the career that could make things happen. It's still a struggle. If our government can't recognize us, then that shows we still have a long way to go. But at least we're kind of like getting somewhere. And then also, if you picked up what Youngster said earlier on, before you can make a change somewhere, you first need to know yourself, who you are. And then just coming back to the point, why is Mozambique probably not kind of like making it, or, the copyrights and so forth? I think my experience when I've looked at especially the southern countries around South Africa, I feel like the music scenes are still dominated by South African music. And that's the danger. Because if Mozambique could identify itself with the original sounds of Mozambique, that's the start. That's what you need to sell to South Africa. And then in that way, you create a value of the art of Mozambique. Because when a FOSTA goes to Mozambique, FOSTA wants to hear the true sound of Mozambique, not a mapiano, it's kind of like a European coming to South Africa and then you take them to the city instead of taking them to Langa. Because if you want to get to know what South Africa is, it's a township. Because the same city is the same London or UK, the same vibe. So, what was the question now again, Danilo?
Doesn't matter. That was deep. Just talking more about what was I talking about?
Wait, how not to commodify so that the art isn't commodified?
Yeah. The value is not sitting there. There's no art is just like a really lovely, beautiful thing that we love to do.
It's a very difficult one, because not most of the artists, but majority of the artists, they come from difficult backgrounds. And we use art. Some of us actually use art to kind of like express our pains, and educational, as much as Youngster said, and the guys. So it's the same like the trying to get a young kid on an entrepreneurial mind coming from a township such as Langa. It's always a hassle, because firstly you are trying to break out of poverty, and it's a constant, because you're living from hand to mouth. The bit that you're making, gets used, and you kind of like don't have the, to save and grow bigger. So it's quite a difficult one, honestly, to kind of like put that value whereby you'd get artists just doing it, for the love of it. You do get those artists who are doing it, but yet again, as Gaba said, we need to pay bills, we need to eat, we need to,
All right, guys, I do want to respect everybody's time. I do realize it's just gone past half past, and there are many other talks to go and attend. So I'll close things off today, just allowing our panel to be able to share just maybe last words as part of this discussion. Something new might have been sparked or a new idea. It does sound like whether you're in the music business itself, I suppose just having more of these conversations, talking more about it, finding out in your sphere of influence, how can you allow music a higher platform or allow its opportunity to influence? And if you're a listener of music as well, too. How do you allow, what music do you listen to? How do you support music? Do you pay for rights? Don't you? Do you, how are you supporting the music industry? Do you pay for tickets? Do you get freebies? Just thinking about that. But let's go around the room. Refilwe, we'll start with you if we can pass to the mic. And then we'll just go last thoughts on music's role in society, diversity, and ethics.
I think music's role is definitely to, like you said, to enable change, to obviously kind of grow make people's lives better more than anything. And also, like I said earlier on, inclusivity and access are so important where music plays a role, because so many people are denied access to certain spaces because of where they come from, because of, who they are. So yeah, I think we need to see more how can I put it, more institutions being built, like your pussy parties, for example, where, they're creating a space for LGBTQ plus people to actually, learn how to DJ, actually showcase their art. Afro-punk as well, just as a whole, as a festival, it was so important because I think it was one of the biggest festivals to enter Africa that really showcased inclusivity and actually it's a safe space, basically. They created a safe space for you to be who you are. So I think we need to see more of those kind of movements. Let me rather call it a movement being built. I don't think we're seeing enough of them.
Thank you, Refilwe. Appreciate you. Youngster, your song is 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Come now. I think we need to I think we need to be braver as musicians and as the listeners as well. Put people on the local artists that nobody else knows yet. Introduce people to music, because I feel like sometimes when they pass you the aux, you just play what everybody want to hear. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to play something that no one's ever heard. And also, as an artist, I will say, this is something that I do already, but what I would like to see more artists get involved in is that the platforms that we have nowadays are crazy. I think the only difference between when I had a cell phone and when my little brother got a cell phone is that he got a place to promote himself. And I just had a phone to make calls. That's it. But if I had the same access as what I had, or as what he has now, and if I had it like 15 years ago, just imagine what I would have been promoting. It would have been craziness, So I feel like we need to use some of these platforms a bit smarter and wiser. Like I say, we're living in a very, very corrupt society, especially in South Africa. Yes, we don't want to dwell on these things, but as an artist, social commentary is important. If you look at NWA, you look at Public Enemy, you look at Run DMC, Africa Bambata, all they spoke about was the injustices of America. And we have way more injustices than America, yet we do not speak about it in music. As artists, we have the greatest time ever with the internet to do this. So what you will hear from me constantly and continuously is what goes on in this country, and I will be uncovering it layer by layer as I have done for the past 13 years, and I will not stop doing it either. And if I'm the only one that does it, chances are most of you are not going to hear it. But if 50 of us decide to do it at least, then the message might reach who it's supposed to reach. It sparks the brain, that person carries on, and the cycle changes at some point. Remember what I said, we need to decolonize, then recolonize, and that's the bottom line. Salute.
In other words as well too, well, I think it's really lovely what he's saying as well about the idea of like really trying to decolonize and then recolonize, and the idea of being brave is that first brave step you're going to take is going to be cuck. You're going to lose money. It's going to be terrible, and it's going to sound bad, and people will shout at you and they think it's terrible. As we know in radio, whenever we change the lineup, everybody's like, what the hell are you doing? I hate this person sucks. Three weeks later, you're so cool, love you so much, it's all good now. Like, be brave enough to go through the shit periods so that you can get to the period of the good period, and just allow have good ethics, know who you are, and let that first come through. Let that first batch be a bit ugly. Let your first attempt be shoddy. The rest will come from there. And thanks for paving the way, youngster. Appreciate you. Gabi, last thoughts.
Just retweet what youngster said.
Love it. Okay. I like you. FOSTA, off you go. Yeah, re-X what he said, you mean. Thank you.
From my side, we need to support each other quite more in all the initiatives that we're doing, man, and believe in ourselves, and be proud of who we are. don't try to be someone else. You know, we were quite fortunate as Africa, you know, to kind of like be shown all these music from all these different territories. Hence, you see now, you know, it's African time. Hence, like they are coming down to Africa and looking what's next, you know. And I think we're still going to stay for some time. So I think being original, being proud, because if you listen to Afro, you listen to Amapiano, it's original African music, man, you know. And the more we can do that, you know, the more the world is going to listen to us, and the more we can start changing the governments in our countries and so forth. Yeah.
And the world is indeed listening. And so what narrative do we want to send? What narrative about who we are as people do we want to send off to the world as well? To who are we as Africa? Let that come through in the arts and crafts. Round of applause for our panelists, ladies and gentlemen.